One day there was a boy walking along the road to the neighboring farm. It was a beautiful day and he was whistling and enjoying his walk. Then he saw a box lying abandoned at the side of the road. He got curious, picked it up and examined it. The box was locked, so he could not open it. He decided to take it along with him and continued on his way. A little while later, he spotted a key lying in the road. He picked it up, wondering if it would fit in the lock. He tried it, and lo and behold, the lock opened. He wondered what treasures it might hold as he slowly opened the lid and peeped inside. What he saw there was a cow's tail, and if the tail had been longer, this tail would be as well.
Can chat hear us? Okay. Chat, are you hearing links? Yes.
Oh, but there I am.
There we go.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I thought everything was fixed now, but apparently not. So I am... that was just another reason for me to get Bill Gates to buy me a Mac because of his bloody computers messing up my sound, and it's not good enough. He is personally responsible and should get me a proper computer that actually works. Yes, I'm angry.
Blame the sound engineer. We would, Didi, but we don't have one.
I'm the sound engineer here and I have no idea what I'm doing.
So in the absence of sound engineers, we're blaming Bill Gates. And to be fair, he did mess everything up.
Him
and his stupid updates.
Yeah, his updates messes with Voicemeeter, and that is the reason my audio has been a bit off lately. And I finally figured that out, just a couple of days ago. And not only that, but for me to come in stereo, I have to change cables for my microphone. And when I do that, I have to set the right cable in Voicemeeter. Hence why OBS didn't pick up my sound, because it wasn't connected at all. So
there
yeah,
we go.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Dancing Penguin and DJ, for the lemons. That is very good of you. So I don't want to give a headphone because then I will have the microphone in my face all the time, which drives me crazy. So
DDJ has donated a diamond and said shiny things make some ladies and magpies happy. Well, the shiny diamonds make these ladies happy. Thank you, DDJ.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Only the D-line diamonds.
Yeah, if you... Well, nobody's got our addresses, but that would be a bit much, to be honest. The actual ones.
Actual diamonds are a certain group's best friends, not a lady's, in my opinion. So
the biz.
They can keep them. Yeah.
We know. Anyways, Norway.
Yes. Yeah, that's tomorrow, 17th of May. So hence, my brain just stopped. Hence the theme. Yeah, I should start blaming that one, or that I get a speaking hang up like multiplication.
That's why Dee Dee said shiny things and not diamonds, apparently. I do like shiny things. They're nice to look at.
Yeah, they can be nice to look at.
Oh. But yes, Norway's National Day, 17th of May. And it's quite a big party, is it not, Lynx?
Oh, yes, it is. Well, it wasn't last year, and I'm not sure how it will be tomorrow, but it's the People's Party, and our celebrations are actually unique in the world because any country that have a parade going, they have their military parading, while we have our children. So all Norwegian children march in a procession on 17th of May, singing and waving flags and everything. So that was actually quite fun doing when you were a kid. I
can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's that much fun when you're an adult. It certainly wasn't that fun when I graduated from high school, because they also go. It's for the children up to 12 years, and then it's the graduates from high school, and then it's certain organizations for adults. But that's not the main draw of the day.
Yes. With the students, I heard that was called a Russ or Rus.
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 Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, it was only for those who were going to take higher education, go to university and everything. But in the 90s, they reformed the school system, and now they want everyone into university, basically. So it's just the trades who doesn't go.
University was never meant to be for everyone.
I know. Now it's just the trades who don't go to university, and even they have now become Rus. We have different colors to differentiate who is who. So those with the general education, that basically can take everything, they are dressed in red. Those who focus on the economics, they wear blue. And those who take trades, they wear black. So you can tell who has studied what and nearly what they will take. And that usually kicks off at the 91st of May. And then we have basically 17 days of drunkenness.
Yes, apparently this it's been debated for decades if it hasn't been better to postpone the celebration.
Yeah, because
until after final exams, because some people are failing.
Yeah, we do have a final exams after that, so the timing is a bit crappy. Yeah. Yeah, well, and not everyone can do it all 17 days. I nearly managed it, but I was wrecked at the end.
We have some Norwegian in the chat, D-Live.
Oh, we do.
What does that say, Lynx?
Oh, DTJ. I thought Norway was an imaginary place. Well, yeah. So I'm only guessing at what you're saying. Well, it can be a place of dreams. Yeah, Norway.
It's just a continuation of Sweden. No, that's a bad thing.
Well, at least I didn't say it was just a continuation of Denmark, because then I would have to fight you.
Noted. Do not compare the Norway and the Denmark.
Nor Sweden, for that matter. I am not a Swede, I am not a Dane, I am Norwegian.
Norwegian.
And the paradox asks if that's the day when school children make...
Patoric.
What is that?
I don't know what Patoric means. Patoric. Nope, that's a fancy word. That's a big word.
Yeah, that's too fancy for me. I'm sorry.
Much too fancy. Get out of here with your vocabulary.
Well, there usually are speeches done by one from the 12-year-olds that is now 7th grade. It was 6th grade in my time. Oh, but I just dated myself somewhat.
Speak to Norwegians.
Yeah. Well, at least there's a lower in... Oh, patriotic. Well, they are sort of patriotic. I honestly haven't listened to any one of them for basically since I finished.
Well done for making a typo that looked like it could be a word, by the way.
Yeah, that totally looked Greek or something.
It did.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I suppose they were kind of patriotic, but it is woke patriotic. Norway has this weird dichotomy where we are very nationalistic, but anyone can become Norwegian. I know many countries have that, yes. But for us it ends up being a bit more schizophrenic, because as a sovereign state we are very young. We ended up under Denmark after the Black Death. At first it was a so-called union where we had somewhat of self-determination, but our so-called elite and noblemen did everything the Danish king wanted. Sweden was in there for a time as well, but they broke loose. And Norway tried, but wasn't able to do it. I think that is because the population was very small and very spread out, so it was easy for the Danes to retake control. Oh, thank you, Boycott. And yes. So when the Reformation came, about the same time, the Danish king took total control. And I'm not sure if our noble class was exterminated or if it simply died out, but they lost all power, and in the continuous centuries we basically had no one left from that class. There are descendants still, but I'm not sure if that is in the female line or in the male line. But after 400 years we finally tore free from Denmark. We got our constitution at the same time in 1814, but we didn't get our freedom because we entered into a union with Sweden, but we did have self-determination within that. And our politicians wanted to break free basically the whole time, of course. And then after what was basically just a weak pretense, sorry, the politician declared that the union was null and void, and the final process of tearing from Sweden started. This was in the late 1800s, and was partially also because Sweden was the great journey, and the Norwegian politicians didn't like that for some reason. And also we wanted control over our shipping because we were huge in the shipping business at that time. Our fleet was enormous. So for some weird reason, I will try not to get into my conspiracy theories on this. The Norwegian politicians wanted a Danish prince as our king. No, less than 100 years after we freed ourselves from the Danes, they wanted a Danish king. Or Danish prince. Yeah, that is odd. So they put it to a vote, and the Norwegian men wanted a republic instead. They didn't want a king, and in particular not a Danish one. So the politicians held another vote, because they voted wrong, obviously. And this time they barely... Yeah, that's the earliest second voting, second referendum on the stuff that I know of. So sorry guys, we did it first. Truly sorry for what we started over 100 years ago. And this time they managed to barely get over 50% of the vote for the Danish prince, and we got a Danish prince as a king, who just happened to be married to Queen Victoria's granddaughter, which I'm sure is a coincidence.
Absolutely a coincidence. Nothing to do with anything at all. Our royal family didn't do nothing.
She was just a bird. Nothing. It was just a bird. Yeah.
That's like had to fight for its identity and therefore being strongly nationalistic, but only in certain ways. I mean, that's certainly reminding me of a particular nation in Britain, Scotland.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got our Danish prince as a king in 1905, and 5 years later, Germany invaded. And the British were also on their way to invade us, by the way. They didn't come to rescue us, they wanted to invade us. That was released in documents a few years ago. Yeah, they just love us. Yeah. Yeah, our beautiful fjords. Yeah. And our politicians basically had... okay, I have to go back slightly to the 20s. Our Labour Party was in the 20s revolutionary Marxist party, which, oddly enough, didn't get many votes. Who would think it? So, yeah, they were in socialist economy before they were actually kicked out. And do you know why they were kicked out? because they refused to label fishermen who had their own fishing boat as what's the word? Bourgeois. And that is because they weren't actually rich. They were basically a fishing man with a boat. It could be a rowboat. They weren't huge. It wasn't, like the fishing boats we have today. And many of our so-called working class had quite some independence compared to many others. We never had the feudal system, for example, so we stood a bit more freely. We didn't have that kind of working class. We didn't have an upper class. The only one we had was Danes and some rich merchants from Germany, from the Hansa Legion back in the day.
Rich merchants.
I don't think they glowed, actually.
No blowing. Okay.
Yeah, a certain group was actually banned from Norway for the first decades until they were emancipated, when the big emancipation wave came. But they were kicked. The Labour Party was kicked out of the Socialist International, and in, I think it was either it was the late 20s or the early 30s, they decided to rebrand themselves into Social Democratic Party. And people actually believed that, so they got into government. And they were in a coalition government in the late 30s. They basically held the power when the Germans came, and they had spent the last few years dismantling our military. Because there will be no more wars after the Great War.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I'm sure that
definitely not going to need a military at all. They're not going to come in handy. Nope.
No. It was definitely just a coincidence.
Totally.
Yeah. So that was the main reason for the Norwegian military, because the officers basically had to send boys naked to fight the Germans. They didn't have uniforms. They didn't have guns. They didn't have ammunition. They didn't have anything. So the fight they did put up was actually very good considering. And we also had, I think we had the most officers die in fights because they were fighting side by side with the men. They didn't just send them out and, go kill the Germans.
Yeah, brave.
Yeah, because they really wanted to defend the country. But our government basically hadn't lifted a finger. They knew they were coming. But, there's nothing we can do or something. Pretend. Until the king said no, and we're siding with allies, and then the royal family fled because they were in quote-unquote mortal danger. So, don't look at the Danish royal family under German occupation. So we basically had 35 years of freedom before we quote-unquote regained it in 1945. All this history really have fueled the nationalistic spirit, and it really made into propaganda. We fought for our freedom, our independence, blah blah blah. So it's a really sharp dichotomy to one world and open borders and everything. So Yeah.
Presume stood for
Mm-hmm.
quite some time and is yet now being unpacked because the original founding myths that we have for our countries are being found to be problematic,
Yeah.
to use their wording.
It's too white.
Yes, basically, too
Yeah.
white.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
that
Nolles.
sort of brings in the thing that I saw about other groups within Norway lobbying to show their flags on
Mm-hmm.
Norway Day, because apparently people should be able to show their own country's flags on a day which is specifically about Norway.
That has been a fight that's been going for years and years. So far, I only think it's the pride flag that's allowed for some reason. I'm not quite sure. But there's always someone pushing for
Yes.
those with immigrant background to also have their flags from their original country. Oh, thank you for the
Absolutely.
ice cream. Thank you for the ice cream, Nolles, and
Thank you,
welcome.
Nolles.
Good to see you as always. Um,
Yeah.
so it hasn't been implemented, and most people kind of shake their head about it. But it's a tactic of wearing us out, basically. So who knows where it
Yes.
will end up?
Because it's no use, say, presenting an argument like, if there's a Thailand Day, do British expats there get to wave their flag? No, of course not, because it is one rule for one circumstance and the other rule for the other, and we know this.
Yeah, it's also the source of another grievance because when I'm not sure if the Danes started it or if it started after we broke with Denmark, but it was a policy of so-called Norwegification, in lack for a better translation, of the Sami, where they were refused to learn the language, wear their costumes and everything. And the thought behind it was exactly the problems we see increasing all over Europe and in our seedling states. Because they recognized that being a homogenic people is a strength, and after 400 years under another country, they really wanted to forge that national spirit. So the thinking was that up north they would have to really just focus on the Norwegian. I'm not saying it was right or wrong or anything, but it wasn't, a source of evil that it's claimed to be, in my opinion. And also, I think it's generally wrong to say that people in the past were thinking in the way we're thinking today, because they most certainly wasn't.
No, they most certainly were not.
So
Totally different mindsets.
yeah, so today it's swung in the complete opposite direction, where the Sami have the power of veto certain stuff in northern areas, and they're given preference over everything. So that's quite contentious up north.
Yeah, and presumably they were only in certain areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not really all over Norway.
No, well, today most Samis live in Oslo, so
Right.
maybe they want to control Oslo as well. I don't know. Um, but the population up there is very mixed between Norwegians and Sami. I think the oldest claim to Sami blood in a straight line goes to the 1700s. And that is one person.
Yeah.
One single person.
I
but
don't know if the Americans can comment on whether that's anything similar, like Native Americans and stuff. Oh, we have a new person in the YouTube chat. Hello, Wolfchen.
Let's get over there. I have. I completely forgot about YouTube in my history lesson over here.
It's been a good history lesson. You know, it's interesting. We don't learn about this stuff.
No, yeah,
some roboting problems. History is racist.
Yeah,
yes, history is very racist.
Yeah, I stopped loading the page, so it should be fine. The problems I have not read my computer because I had some problems with my audio late last night. So the first thing I had to do when I got off today was to do the whole process once again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just how you want to be spending the morning.
Oh yeah.
Don't you just love reinstalling everything on your device?
Yeah.
It's everyone's favorite pastime, and that's why Bill Gates is a genius.
Yeah, that's why he is the most beloved man in the world. When you have to unplug all of your audio devices and reboot your computer, then you have to uninstall one part of the audio system you have and reboot. And then you have to uninstall that and reboot and check that everything is gone. And then you have to reinstall it one piece at a time with rebooting in between everyone, which is really, really fun. Yeah, I might have to do it several times as well. Let's just say it's infuriating and I almost ended up bald, so I think I might have ended up with a few more grey hairs or something.
Oh, Dee Dee's getting on me about using the word device.
Ooh.
All right. Laptop, computer, whatever. It's a machine.
Is device a bad word as well now? What isn't a bad word?
I don't know. He's just messing.
When are you not messing, Dee Dee?
Call it a doodah.
I'll call it a thing.
The thing.
Mm-hmm.
The blasted machine.
Yeah.
The infernal contraption. That's some of the names that I've leveled at my computer, among others that I can't repeat on stream.
Yeah, same here. I've always wanted a technician that would follow the machine to take over when something went wrong, so that I didn't have to chuck it out the window or something. So, yeah. Yeah, Didi doesn't have a sense of humor. He doesn't know what humor is. So he is always, it's not deadpan, but he is an actual deadpan.
Oh. Yeah, I think that would be accurate.
Yeah. The thing to keep away from hammers, exactly.
Yeah. But we got stories mostly about something which is quite unique to Norway tonight and relates to the title of the stream. It's the Huldra. We should talk about them.
Yeah, here in
We should
Norway.
introduce them a little bit.
Yeah, not just talk about Norwegian history. You know, it's
Oh,
not a
that's very interesting.
Yeah, but we're not a history channel, per se. So today is about Huldra, which is a Scandinavian creature of the underworld. It's somewhat hard to pin down. Several of our creatures are hard to pin down. In exactly what they are. I think because it's over so huge distances that it's taken on a few local variants, basically. And perhaps in some places it has melted together with another aspect from previously. Huldra sounds like a Romulan
Yes,
space station.
Okay, that was funny.
The space Huldra. Space girl.
Right.
So yeah. So in some ways, Huldra is the name of basically creatures of the underworld or supernatural beings, somewhat in general. I have actually talked about them before with the Tuftefolk on Sunflassa. That is within the Huldra genre. I just combined Norwegian with English there. It's a bit hard
Genre.
it's a bit hard to switch between Norwegian and English with a word or two. Then it tends to end up quite
I
mixed.
get you.
Yeah. So it's within the genre, but maybe not really quite Huldra. For the most famous version of Huldra is a beautiful young woman with long blonde hair. That men just fall in love with and can't forget and everything like that. And if you marry her, your farm might stay very prosperous and have a large herd of animals. However, you also really have to do what she says. One story I didn't have time to record today tells of a Hulder wife, and she wanted a chopping block for the slaughter for the autumn. And she told her husband to go up in the mountain and chop down a specific tree, which just happened to be the largest tree around. And he thought that was a bit of a waste for such a tree to have a chopping block. Hello, Ferocious Chihuahua. Thank you for hosting as always. Always good to see you. Follow Ferocious, everyone. He does some interesting work.
Indeed.
Yeah. However, Huldra didn't like her husband gainsaying her. Uh, so, and he also had something else to say about it because the tree was so huge that his horse wouldn't be able to get it off the mountain. So his new wife took the axe, left the house, and went up the hill, chopped down the tree, and took it over her shoulder and carried it down. He never said anything against her again. He did everything she told him to. And rumor has it, yeah, okay, my wife can just take the largest tree around on her shoulder and walk it down the mountain. I think I'll do what she says.
Apparently, my wife can bench press 30-foot pines. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing the trousers in this relationship, apparently. You know what they say, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah. So, yeah, this story was allegedly told by either the great-granddaughter or the great-great-granddaughter of that couple. And it did sound like she was quite a free spirit, quite strong-willed, and did know how to get her way. So, yeah, be careful of Huldra.
Yeah. So they sound like a combination between maybe a siren and a magic worker from that sort of description, but they're very, very diverse.
Yeah.
In what they're like and what they can do.
Yeah, that's why I think the local variations are due to distance, that they have one common source, and then that has evolved over the years with the stories that are told. Also, stories from the mill falls under Hulder stories. So,
okay.
It's almost a collective term for the underworld and the people from there.
Well, yes. I mean, as I will probably touch on, they were definitely reminding me of a certain other set of people who live underground in the British Isles.
Yeah.
I feel like they might be cousins.
Yeah, that might be the
ones
case.
Whose names we don't like to mention.
Yeah, there are the mention of them is banned on my computer.
Banned.
No,
completely.
Not on the channel, just my computer. Because I don't want another invasion of them, and not when I finally, hopefully, have sorted my audio issues for at least a time.
Is it safe to call them the good folk? It's probably safe to call them the good folk.
Yeah. Or maybe the best folk. You know, they are the best.
The best.
Yeah.
Yep. They're just the best. You know.
There's no one above them. No one at all.
Couldn't get more beautiful or more accomplished people than them. No. Okay, I think we've maybe laid it on thick enough.
Yeah, the three-letter people. Yeah, exactly.
Them.
Yeah, them. So, let's start our first story. This one takes place in Oslo. It is told in the mid to late 1800s. So, and he's referencing an earlier period, so that would be late 1700s or so. Somewhere between the last half of that and the first half of the 1800s. So, yeah, let's take a trip to Oslo back in the day. The King of Ekeberg. In my childhood, some friends and I had a habit of going up to Ekeberg every Sunday afternoon. All through the week, we longed for the afternoon we would spend in the fresh air, when we would gather hackberry branches, to the pussy willow flutes we would twist, to the sparkling crystals we would find, and to the sweet strawberries we would gather. As we got older, we left the pussy willows and the hackberries alone, but at times we would continue our Sunday excursions. And on the fields of the Ekeberg farm, we would joyously run after the fair-winged Apollo. In the field by the derelict old beacon, we would tumble around with the butterfly net, chasing after the noble swallowtail, who equally tried our patience as it woke our admiration for its easy flight. What I really found interesting about those fields was not the scent of the hedge or the melancholic pussy willow flute, not the shining crystals or the wonderful strawberries, not the purple spotted Apollo or the yellow swallowtail, but the romantic secretness of the place, brought forth by my earliest childhood memories of these places, the wish to experience something adventurous, the thought of all the beauty and wonder inside the rocks, of the mysterious creatures whose presence or non-presence was still unclear to me, that the tale spoke of inside the depth of the mountain. The tales of the King of Ekeberg, the people of the underworld, and their mountain castle have now gone quiet, but of the tales I heard as a child, some still live on in my memory. These I have tried to bring back in the following tales. Half a century ago, Ekeberg was not as cleared up nor as populated as it is today. It was overgrown with woods and thickets, and from the city, the only houses to be seen was that of the old Ekeberg farm. Up there on the hill in the morning sunshine, or with drifting clouds behind it. Down the hill, a small red house stood by the side of the road where it turns to the right up towards the farm. It was called a turn. Today there is a respectable building standing in that place, a dancing parlor in summer and a recreational place for the young who like to go for walks to listen to the cuckoo. At the turn, in the little cottage that was there at the time I am speaking of, there lived a poor basket woman who was barely able to scrape together enough for a living. One day she was returning home with a pail of water. There, in the middle of the road, sat a large fat toad. "Go off the road for me, and I will be your midwife when the time comes," she said in jest to the toad, who straight away jumped off the road as quickly as he could. Some time later, it was an autumn evening, the woman sat spinning by the chimney when a man came in. "Listen," he said, "my wife will soon go into confinement. Her pregnancy is almost at an end. If you will help her when the time comes, you won't regret it." "With God as my witness," said the woman, "I cannot do that, as I know nothing of giving birth." "Oh, you'd better do it, like you promised her," said the man. The woman most certainly could not remember ever promising someone to be their midwife, and told him so. But the man answered, "Yes, you did make such a promise. The toad who sat in the road when you returned with the pail of water is my wife. If you will help her," the man continued, and the woman now understood it was the King of Ekeberg who stood before her, "you will never regret it. I will repay you well, but you must not waste the money I give you, nor must you give it away if someone asks you, and you must not talk about it to anyone." "Dear me," said she, "I can keep quiet, and just tell me when your wife goes into labor, and I will help her as best I can." Some time went by. Then the same man came in one night and asked her to follow him. She rose. He went before, she after, and before she knew where they were or how it happened, she was inside the mountain, where the queen was in bed, laboring to give birth. It was a marvelous place, and the woman thought she'd never seen anything like it. But when they came in, the man sat down and linked his hands over his knees. And when men sit in that fashion, a birthing woman cannot deliver her child. The woman knew that much. So she and the queen asked him to do errands, asking him to fetch one thing after another. But there he sat and would not move. In the end, the midwife had an idea. Now she's delivered, she told the man. Incredulous, he unlinked his hands and asked how it came to pass. In that moment, the Christian woman put her hand on the queen, who was at once delivered of a child. While the man was out to get some warm water for the newborn, the queen said to the midwife, "My husband likes you well enough, but when you leave, he will throw after you nonetheless, for it is his nature, and he cannot resist it. You must slip behind the door as soon as you leave, so he won't hit you." When the child was bathed and dressed, the queen sent her out to the kitchen for an ointment to rub on the baby's eyes. Such a kitchen she had never laid her eyes on before. There were rows of exquisite plates and bowls, and under the ceiling hung pots and pans of pure silver, polished to such a bright sheen it reflected off the walls. But no one can imagine how astonished she was when she saw her own maid stand there grinding flour. She took some scissors and cut off a bit of her hem without her noticing and hid the clipping. When she was done and ready to leave, she remembered what the queen had said and slipped behind the door. Just then the king shot a glowing broom after her, flames trailing after it. "Did I hit you?" he shouted. "Oh no," she answered. "Good," he called. The sun stood high when the woman came home, but the maid, who always complained of being tired and having aches and pains in her back, was still abed. She woke the girl and asked, "And where have you been this night?" "Me, mother?" the girl asked. "I haven't been anywhere that I know of, except here in bed." "Yes, then I know better," she said. "This scrap I cut off your skirt in the mountain this night. You see how it fits? But that's how the youth are these days. In earlier times, folk would say the evening prayer and sing their evening psalm before going to bed, so enchantments would hold no power. And I will teach you how to hold our Lord before your eyes. For you have to understand you get tired and sore, and I don't have much use for you when you serve them at night and me during the day." From the day the woman had been midwife for the queen, every morning she found a pouch of silver on her doorstep. Her circumstances quickly changed for the better, and soon she found herself well off. But then, one day, a very poor woman complained and told her of her troubles. "Oh," said the woman in her pride, "that's nothing. It would not be difficult for me to help you, for whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap, and I always help those who come to me." She didn't help the poor old woman, but from that day on, she never found a shilling on her doorstep again. The money she had got all but blew away, and she again had to take her basket and walk the city, rain or shine, to make her living. But the king of Ekeberg didn't just run his wife's errands, however. He also went about his own affairs and wooed the girls of the city, who during Sundays and other holidays walked around the mountains, thickets and rocks to gather berries and flowers. Then he would show himself as a horrible, shriveled man with red eyes. But when he wanted to do well, he often took the appearance of Bernt Anker and went about as a somewhat old-fashioned man with a star on his chest. But this was just a changeable appearance. In reality, he remained the old, horrible, shriveled, red-eyed man, something that made itself known in his marital relationships. As far as anyone knows, his wife always had the most monstrous troll children with thick heads, red eyes, and insatiable greed, which the parents wanted to get rid of as quickly as possible. And to this end, the worthy royal couple sent out their minions and servants. At this time, the people of the underworld at Ekeberg was known to steal kind and beautiful babies and leave their changelings behind. In particular in the areas of Grønland, Enerhaugen and Gamlebyen. Now, they couldn't feed the stolen children themselves, so naturally they stole nurses as well, who they usually kept for the rest of their lives. One girl they took from Gamlebyen was luckier than the others. She had been in the mountain for about a year as a nurse to a beautiful human child when she managed to escape. If it was the ringing of the church bells, by putting on her shoes backwards, or because she said more than she should, or found a sewing needle in her skirt, I don't remember. Just that she found her way out, and from that day kept on talking about how exquisite and beautiful it was in the Ekeberg, how kind the people in there had been to her, how they had talked to her to keep her with them, and what a sweet child she had nursed. Every morning the subterraneans had her rubbing the child's eyes with an ointment from a jar in the kitchen, but they said to her that she had to be careful not to get any of it in her own eyes. She had no idea what it was for. The child had the most wonderful blue eyes. So one day, when the wife was not around, she rubbed some of the ointment over her right eye. Around half a year after she returned from Ekeberg, she was entering Bjerkenbusk's krambod at Stortorget to buy something. There stood a wife from the mountain by the counter, stealing rice from the drawer, and it seemed nobody could see her. "Good day, mother, that I should see you here," said the girl. "How is the baby?" "You can see me?" the wife asked, utterly astonished. "Yes, shouldn't I see you?" the girl asked. "Which eye can you see me with?" the woman from the underworld asked. "Hold on, with my right eye," the girl answered, after blinking with one eye at a time. Whereupon the wife spat in her right eye, and from that moment the girl couldn't see her, nor anything else. She became blind in her right eye. Today these things don't seem to happen anymore. One part might be due to the Enlightenment taking hold, and instead of beating the children every Thursday evening, the people started consulting wise women instead. Secondly, the king of Ekeberg and his underworldly court moved away. The ceaseless drumming and cannon fire from the military during the last war, the trains of great magazines and baggage carriers thundering over the Ekeberg Hill, and the king's roof, making his whole house shake and the silverware rattling on his walls, causing him much despair. One man met him one night in 1814 with countless wagons filled with his belongings and an enormous herd of cattle. "And where are you heading this time of night, with so much baggage and cattle?" asked the man. "I'm moving to my brother at Kongsberg, for I cannot stand all this shooting and roaring," answered the king. And since that time, no one has seen or heard of him. So, that was the king of Ekeberg. And I think the people of Oslo can be glad that he moved away, but perhaps not the people of Kongsberg, that they had another king of the hill.
Yes. Yes, these lot's antics are sounding very familiar.
Yeah, definitely.
Making people do things in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Stealing children.
Getting a human woman to be a midwife, and the wife giving advice on how they should get away safely. And also featuring a frog, which was kind of funny.
But I'm sure they're perfectly nice. I'm sure they have good reasons for doing everything that they're doing, and you know, they were in particular related to any particular other entities. I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, they're all upstanding people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ekeberg is a hill on the east side of Oslo. Oslo is surrounded by mountains for the most part. And when you see pictures of the harbor and some of the surrounding area, there is a hill on the east side. That is usually then also the right side of the picture. Oh my god, now I sound like I have an IQ of 70 or something. But that is the...
Directions are hard.
Yeah. But that is the Ekeberg Hill. These days it's quite populated, but some area have some military stuff going on, so that is still heavy forested. Um,
So yeah, the area has. Do you reckon it's stayed sort of roughly in the condition it was in? In or is it changed like a lot around there?
oh, a lot. The other areas that was mentioned in the story, Grönland and oh, that other place. I don't remember it off the top of my head, of course. That was said it was outside the city boundary, and that is basically considered central Oslo these days. The edges of Oslo today was basically farm country. After the war, it was mainly made into Oslo and the suburbs, basically, in the 50s and 60s. Now it happened a bit earlier in Ekeberg, it sounds like, but not to the extent that came after the war. And then we also had a huge push to move into the cities by people. Before that, there were more people in the countryside. That's still a problem with people going to university, get an education, and the only place they can get a job, either that exists at all or that they would prefer, they stay in the city. So several small places have literally campaigns to get people back in their area, in particular with people who grew up there. They want them to...
What, like, please come and be a farmer?
Please come back to us after university. We're very child friendly, you know.
Yeah.
And for example, positions for engineers, that is usually within the municipality. That
Okay.
you know, get a job and a house, basically. We'll give you a house if you move here and take this job. So
That sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
yeah. And in northern Norway, the variant is that you get part of your student loan written off if you work there for a certain amount of time. That is for everyone, just to keep the place populated, basically.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that is the two most northern areas, Finnmark and Troms. So, you know, it's cold, it's dark in the winter, and all of that. So, when people get a taste of living down south, many stay there. And also, of course, it's the job opportunities. It's much better down south. So, that is the problem in the modern area. The modern era, I mean, not area. If only it was only just an area, it would be hard to, more easy to navigate, I think.
One area of modernity.
Yeah, you know, every country had an area or two that was set off for modernity, and the rest could live a bit more traditionally. That would be nice.
The rest is all just Vikings.
Yeah. The rest is just...
Lots of Vikings.
Yeah, the rest are Vikings drinking mead and all of that. Wielding their axes. Yeah, and wielding their axes and everything.
Quaffing, wielding, all those good verbs. Verbs that we just don't do anymore in these days.
Yeah, we really have to bring a lot of that back.
Especially wielding.
Yeah. Um, Also, a basket woman, that was basically women who were selling things, walking around the streets and carrying their goods in a basket. They didn't bring a wagon or anything. It didn't say, I haven't seen what they sold, but I would think it was some sort of produce or something. Probably some food stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have seen, I think, characters similar to those crop up in British tales, Victorian tales, women selling stuff from baskets. Quite a common trope, I think.
Yeah, I think most places had them. I just didn't find a better word for it, and that is basically the literal translation from Norwegian. Kurvkone. So that was basically poor women scraping together a living. It has been said that Norway was Europe's Africa because of how poor we were. Before we had the oil, we had very little natural resources, so it was mostly fish that brought any wealth and lumber. So
Eli has gotten distracted by the subject of babies.
making the babies or the actual babies?
Making the babies. Apparently, they might do that better up north. I mean, when you can't go outside and it's raining, I suppose maybe you got nothing much better to do.
When there's a snowstorm raging, it's deathly cold outside. Light a fire in the fireplace and have fun, basically.
Yep. And then babies.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Gotta keep warm,
Oh dear, dear life.
Yeah. So, the King of Ekeberg also have a lot of stuff in common with trolls, while the Hulder Hulder females are usually seen as exceedingly beautiful. The men are not. They are anything but. So there, I think they have melded a bit with trolls.
Does that mean Huldra women like to go for human men?
Yep, they definitely wanted human men.
Yep.
It was said that they wanted to become humans, and in the religious sense, it was said that they wanted to become Christian. So therein lies the tale of the tale that I started the stream with. Because DDJ is claiming that I like trolls.
I was about to inform you of that. I wondered if you wanted to address that statement.
Well,
He's making some claims.
I wonder where he got that from, honestly.
I mean, we've talked about trolls.
Yeah.
But you got to talk about trolls in Norway.
Yeah. Well, I can't say that I grew up with trolls in the literal sense. I grew up with the stories of trolls. So, a life without trolls in them. Can that even be a life?
Thank you. Thank you, Beavis and Butthurt, for the ice cream and the lemons. And hello, Carol.
Hey, good to see you.
Follow.
Yeah, and thank you for the lemons.
Boasting about real trolls and how Norway has proper trolls. That's what Didi says you do.
Yeah, well, internet trolls are LARPers.
Beavis claims to be a troll.
Oh, he is. Well, I would have to see you and see if you have a spruce growing on the nose.
Mm.
You know how big you are.
Lycomedes is lamenting the loss of real trolls.
Yeah, where did they go? I have been to Kongsberg, so I don't know if they are there. They might be. Maybe the king of Ekeberg is still there. Yeah, I do think it might be a bit dangerous for me to go looking for him, because maybe I will have to be a nurse for stolen human babies. That would be scary. However, if I do that, I'll make sure to have several days. That is part of the what was considered commonly known, so they don't elaborate on it. I will go into that. I just want to post a link to entropy in the D-Live chat. If you could post that in the YouTube chat, because I do have an entropy. I also want the free stage alternative. And if you have questions or anything, or want to make a chat, then you can do that there. So the needle, large trolls, they don't like things of metal and steel and iron. So by having something of iron on you, and with the needle, I suppose it's also a bit with that thing stinging you with. There was another tale that came across from a valley in western Norway, one of the fjords. We have a new follower and I can't pronounce the name, but anyway, welcome to the channel. Yeah. As to Red I'm a bit for the to start to see what the chat is saying. Or maybe I just need glasses or something. But the story I came across from a fjord in this part of the country was a farm that it was known that if the horse neighed and the rooster called and the dog was barking at the same time, something was wrong. And the son at the farm was betrothed to a woman, and she was up at the mountain on the pastures with cattle. We used to send all our cattle. Is the connection?
You're not roboting for me. You're not roboting for me here. I'm hearing you. All right.
It was just a dip in my internet.
It might just be D-Live.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was.
Internet.
Yeah, it might go a bit up and down right now. I'm sorry about that. It's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, understand that. You could go to YouTube. Maybe it's better there and listen. When it's the internet. Yeah, when it's the internet, it's really not much I can do.
Yeah.
You know, there are other people on the same internet, so at times it can get a bit slower. But the lady, we used to send our cattle up in the mountain to pasture, and young and old women went with them to make dairy products and all of that during the summer to keep for the rest of the year. And his fiance was up there at the Säter, as we call it. And one day, the dog barked, the horse neighed, and the rooster made his call all at the same time. And the son of the farm knew something was wrong. So he took the horse and immediately rode off to the mountain, and his fiancée worrying about her. And when it got there was a wedding taking place, and his fiancée was the bride, and that was the Huldrefolk. In that story, they are very similar to the Tuftefolk, and she was about to be married off to one of the men. However, if he kissed her, then she would be taken. There was no way to get her back. She couldn't resist or anything. But she was a very clear-thinking woman and hurriedly took a needle in her mouth. Therefore, the Hulder man didn't dare kiss her. And her fiancé came in the nick of time and grabbed her and ran off with her.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was said she was never the same after that. She sort of lost her mind. I'm not sure if they married, but at least she was saved from the underworld.
Do be careful with your fiancés around the
Yeah.
Huldra.
Yeah, and if you're a lady and walk in Norwegian nature, make sure you have needles on you and have them at the ready.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Useful safety advice for visiting Norway.
Yeah.
Salt, iron, horseshoes, carry 'em.
And needles.
And needles.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Yeah, and also make sure that you say your evening prayer and sing your evening psalm before going to bed, unless you want to spend your night with the Huldra, apparently.
To whomsoever it may concern.
Yeah.
Thunor may be appropriate for you.
Yeah, maybe that's what happened when I wake up and feel exhausted. I don't know. So, also we heard about the changelings in this story, and the penchants for young women to disappear and take care of newborn babies. I did find that in story quite interesting, and also that ointment continued from one story to the other. Apparently that was needed for a human to see them. But I'm not sure why the queen's baby needed ointment for its eyes. Unless the father was human or something.
Perhaps. Perhaps, yes. That could have been... That could be a thing. Yes.
If so,
Unless...
the baby would be out of wedlock and not a child of the king of Ekeberg, which is a bit interesting.
That would actually be very scandalous. Unless
Yeah.
you just raise a Fae child away from the Fae and it doesn't get.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I said the word. Huldra. Unless you raise a Huldra child away from the Huldra and it doesn't get the ointment, then then it might not be able to see its own parents, which is an interesting prospect.
Yeah. So I think I just managed to open the browser. So if there's an audio issue right now, that's the cause. But okay, my computer being right now. I'm trying to do it as soon as possible. I do this. Definitely. There, it's gone. Okay, yeah. Don't get it once more. Once enough. Yeah. Yeah. um. So the king ended up moving to Kongsberg, which is a place with somewhat of an interesting history, along with Kristiansand. Both of those places were founded by King Christian IV of Denmark in the 1500s. And apparently Kristiansand was supposed to lie somewhere else, but the king had a bit much to drink. He was quite a heavy drinker and pointed in the wrong direction. But it was the king, so they had to do as he said, and that's why Kristiansand lies where it does today.
I'm getting questions about our avatars. Lynx's avatar is a hungry-looking wildcat, and Katrina has a reptilian eye. Should we be worried?
You just noticed that? You're slow on the uptake.
Yes, he is a bit, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes. No.
But I am actually a bit hungry right now. I haven't eaten much today. Too much to do, so... But
don't mind me, I'm just an interdimensional floating eye, minding my own fourth dimensional business.
Yeah, well, at least you've exited your tin can, at least.
So that means be worried. Okay. Be afraid, Didi, be very afraid.
Be very afraid and be very happy that we are an ocean apart.
Well, they are.
Yeah. Now, Kongsberg lies where it was intended to. It was a silver mine, and the city grew up around the mine. The Danes actually put in quite a bit of finances for mining in Norway, and Kongsberg was one of those places. I don't know if it's specifically tied to any supernatural stuff, but apparently in Oslo, that seems to have been the talk, considering that the king moved to his brother. So there was another king, apparently, but fortunately not of Ekeberg, but of Kongsberg. Kongsberg is Berg as well, for anyone wondering.
Yes. So they have a sort of very regional chieftainship
Yeah.
type thing then.
Yeah, it seems
going
like
on.
it. Yeah, sounds like it. So yeah, I think that is what I have to say about the story. I might also mention that where I live, there are tales of Huldra taking men, and that is the most known version. That's the main lore that has come down. Not so much in stories, but what is said.
So a man's got to be careful when he's out for an evening walk in your parts.
Yeah, in particular when he's walking in the woods. You have to be careful of Huldra because she will lure you to her place, and you won't be coming back.
What does what does she tend to lure you with? Just herself?
I think so. As I said, she is exceedingly beautiful.
It works on men, yeah.
Yeah, I tend to do that. I'm not sure if she's a singer. I don't remember ever hearing that. And where I live, there was a man who was taken by the Huldra in the 1770s, I think it was. So I do suspect that most places have stories like that of named people that disappeared in that way.
Around sort of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Kidnapping of random people in the woods by similar entities to the Huldra. We have more Norwegian in the chat.
Yeah.
Guge kata og the what? Skapninge. Thanks.
Is how it is in Norwegian. Danish would be more skiggekær or øgleskapninger. I'm not the best in Danish, but there was a joke in my circles when I was young that in order to speak Danish, you only had to hold your tongue while speaking.
What does øgleskapninger mean?
Skiggekatt, that is a shadow cat, and øgleskapning, that is a lizard creature.
Illicit creature.
You better hide from Katrina now, Didi. Calling her a lizard.
I'm not illegal. I've got my papers.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Lizard. That's the reptile.
Lizard creature. Yeah, that's pretty accurate to that. I mean, it's just one of the forms. But,
You're a shapeshifter. Interesting.
Things you never knew about me.
Yeah. True that. You don't really know those you speak on the internet with, do you? Yeah. So if ever I were to meet you, I should look out for a lizard. Interesting.
Yep. Well, like I say, maybe not.
Yeah.
Now everyone in the chat's scared of me. I'm not a lizard.
Well,
although if anyone's a David Icke enthusiast, they're just going to be like, "You're a lizard." That's exactly what a lizard would say.
She's one of them. She's one of them. Oh my god. Leave the channel.
No.
Oh no! Disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And of course, you would also have the obligatory amount of people said, I knew it from the start.
Mm. Yeah, I could be a magical dragon. I like that.
Yeah.
Dragons.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, should we jump to the next story? Perhaps?
Yeah. So we only had 2 tonight, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's because my one is it's a bit long. It is a bit long. Oh, I had some editing fun. A lot of
Yeah.
editing to do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I would think so. On my part, for just having one story, you can lay all the blame on Bill Gates. So go get him, people.
Yes. I mean, technically, there's 3 stories within my story. So that's quite a lot of stories for your money.
Yeah. Yeah. At
Is
least.
Lynx admitted to being a lizard yet? No, keep up, Beavis. Lynx is a giant talking lynx.
Yeah. I'm not a lizard cat.
I would just be getting too ridiculous now.
Yeah, that brought some unpleasant images to my head.
Indeed.
A cat should be hairy and furry, not scaly.
No scaredy cats.
No. They are banned.
That was rude.
They are banned.
Yeah. Well, we have mostly witches in this story, and then there is a mention of people who are, well, indeed, sounds like they might be the Huldra. So, enjoy.
Okay, roll story.
The Gravedigger's Tales. I was staying in the region of Eidsvoll, a nice enough place, to be sure, with quite a nice church, but not much to do, except attend to the mandatory constitutional walk that one takes in these sort of places. On my second day, I went to seek Per Gravedigger in Store Finstad, a good league south of the river. After a while among the disorderly clusters of outhouses and farmhouses, I found his dwelling place. When I looked, there was no one in the parlour, but an old woman sat in a gloomy cabin, spinning. I asked her some questions. The first one received no answer, but a look, as if she were getting the measure of me. The second and third both received a "huh?" When I finally asked for the 4th time, rather exasperated now, if she could please tell me where the chap, this Per Gravedigger, was, she answered, "Oh, it's still a good league to the grave yet." "No, Per Gravedigger," I shouted. I somewhat regretted it. She was an old woman, after all. "Yes, the grave lies eastwards. If you go along the valley, you'll find it." I later discovered that the neighbouring farm is in fact called Grave. "Grandmother is hard of hearing," piped up a voice from a shadowy corner, where the light had just begun to shine. It was a young girl with a small child on her arm. "Can you tell me where I can find this Per Gravedigger?" I asked her. He's not at home," she answered. "You don't know where he is?" "I suppose he's at Sturry, my aunt's." "Where's Sturry, then?" "On the east side." "Is that far?" "Dunno." "Is no one else at home?" Nah, they all went to a wedding. And in the next cabin? Dunno. Fortunately, in the next cabin, they were more forthcoming with the information that I needed. There was nothing to do but go on to Styrie. Outside in the passage, I met the aunt that the child had mentioned. She was a tall, thin, prim, middle-aged housewife, her grey hair scraped up into a bun under a woolen black hat. With a measured, dry cordiality, she came to meet me and said, "Please, do come in," getting a little disheartened due to the difficulties that I had already experienced. I asked her if Per Gravedigger was there. "Would you like to order a grave?" she asked. No, it's not that. I have heard that he supposedly knows very many old tales and stories, and I wanted to hear some." "Oh, well, in that case, if only old Anders, Per's father, had been here. Well, he was a man who could tell a tale or three. When he began, there was no stopping him. Yet another person to track down? Dear God. Well, can you show me where old Anders is?" "Well, I certainly can. However, he won't be of much use, as he has been dead for 2 years. Per knows some stories too, but it's not as easy to get him in the mood to tell them. He's a little difficult like that, you know. No, old Anders, he could tell stories. One didn't need to ask him twice. But this year, it'll be just 2 years ago since he died, this Michaelmas." "Well, that doesn't help me much," I interrupted, irritated that this blasted Anders was apparently only to be contacted via necromancy, an art in which, like most people, I have no practical experience. "Is Per not here?" "Well, now you say it, he was here. It's true, but he wanted to see the sexton. You'll find him at the sexton's, and if he's not there, he'll be at Blacken, or the parsonage. If he's not in the churchyard, digging a grave, you see old Mother Haberstadt is dead." My patience was very nearly at an end. However, it seemed that one must have a near endless reserve of such when dealing with Per Gravedigger. I decided to save my last scrap. I tried to make a move to leave, but now the old aunt had taken a suspiciously cloudy-looking glass from the dresser and poured a dram of brandy, which she presented to me, together with a piece of candied sugar, on a plate, while she reminisced, reiterating that old Anders had been without equal in the telling of tales. "Per is probably nearly at the sexton's, and if not there, then he's at Backen, or the parsonage, if he's not in the churchyard," she called after me as I left through the gate, going back in the very direction from which I had came. So I determined that the best place to look for him was probably the last place, the place that in her opinion was the least probable. It was one of those horrible, cold, miserable summer days as I went over to the church, winding my way through the dark alleys in the parsonage gardens. The worst of the rain had stopped, but with every gust of wind it dripped down from the trees. The fog and the clouds were low to the ground between the canopy tops. The light fell faint and grey over the graves and simple plaques. The wind whistled through the branches, and not a single bird sang. The shadow of autumn already seemed to hang over this still, quiet, lonely meadow, in which only the church stood, its tower and spire pointing towards the heavens. From the farthest corner of the churchyard I heard the clang of his spade. The gravedigger stood digging a grave. On a knoll, close by, stood the sexton's great goat, a magnificent beast, whom I recognized from previous visits, with his shaggy beard and huge horns, eating grass. I stood a while, and regarded the gravedigger. He was an aging man, and it wasn't looking well on him. One would expect such a profession to put life into perspective, to perhaps inspire philosophical thoughts about the nature of it all. But he looked upon the world with a bitter expression. His face seemed familiar. I searched my memory for it, and eventually recognized it. He bore a striking resemblance to a stubborn horse I had once been troubled with. When he paused his work for a moment to rest, he looked up and caught sight of me. I had hitherto managed to go unnoticed. "Good afternoon, gravedigger," I said. He looked me up and down, spat into his palms, and began to work again. "Pretty hard work in this wet weather," I continued, unfazed. "Yeah, well, it's no bloody easier in the sunshine, to be honest," he replied with a scowl, continuing to dig. "Who's, that for?" I asked, in a vague hope that some sort of conversation might arise from the inquiry. "For the devil and the church," the gravedigger snapped. Somewhat puzzled, I asked for clarification. "Devil takes the soul, church gets the money," he replied. "Well, let me rephrase. What I actually meant to ask is who is going to occupy it?" "A dead woman," answered the gravedigger. The bridge I had been attempting to build was thus unceremoniously demolished. I realized this wasn't going anywhere. Not wishing to get soaked with the rain, which had again begun to fall, and irritated over what appeared to have been a wild goose chase, I told the gravedigger that I had sought him out to hear tales and stories from the olden days, and he wouldn't have to just tell them for nothing, and that he should really be pleased to tell them to someone like myself. After all, I believed in such things that people usually ridiculed in our days. From time to time during my speech, the gravedigger looked at me with beady, horse-like eyes. His looks threw a shadow across my hopes. "Whether folk believe what I tell them, or disbelieve, I'm just as happy," he said. "But what I have heard, and what I know that I know, I will not be someone's fool, sitting and telling them stories like a gossip wife, even if it were the king himself," he added, for extra confirmation. I had already begun to leave, when he stopped his work once more, half turned away from me. After pushing his hat over to one side, he began to rummage, first in one, then in the other of his waistcoat pockets. However, he did not seem to find what he was searching for. His face grew visibly longer, especially after he had completed a new, resultless search of both of his pockets. I quickly understood that he had run out of tobacco, and in satisfaction I saw that my luck had turned. In my botany crate I had one of Tideman's sought-after quarter rolls, and as I feigned, reaching for my handkerchief, by means of a sleight of hand, I caused it to fall on the very edge of the grave which he was digging. Quite calmly, I bent down to pick it up, but studied not to notice the ray of sun that crossed the gravedigger's face in delight at the sight. As if I was lost in thought, I picked it up, called to my horned friend, which stood on the edge of the grave close by, and let it bite off a large part of the roll. "How far is it to Turnsacker?" I asked. The gravedigger mumbled something about abusing God's gifts, but he answered a lot more politely than previously, and said that it was about half a mile on the other side of the Sound. "And to the gold works?" I asked. "That'd be 7 miles, said the gravedigger. "Where's this fellow come from, then, if I may be so bold as to ask?" he added, with the oddest of looks on his face. "Most recently I came from Store Finstadt, where I asked after Per Gravedigger," I replied, laying the roll back in the crate, after giving the goat yet another bite. To this there was no answer, but Per began digging eagerly. Beside the earth and stones, he threw up half-rotten splinters and crumbling bones with his spade. And among the bones that rolled towards my feet was a female skull of such beautiful and perfect shape that Resius would have considered it of an ideal Scandinavian type. I picked it up and looked at it carefully. "It was no old woman who owned that skull," the gravedigger began again. "I can see," I replied. "She was a farmer's wife, here in the village, and she was held in respect and honour. Indeed, had the gravedigger still been inclined to be contrary, he would no doubt have left it there, but the alluring prospect of a roll of tobacco had the most remarkable effect on his mood. Cranky on the inside, spotless on the outside." I gave no answer. "But that is a most fine tobacco you have there, in that little tin box of yours." "This rascal clearly thinks so too," I laughed, as I beckoned the goat and made as if to feed it more. "I've only old Anders my father were alive," said the gravedigger hastily, as he attempted to hinder the goat in its cheerful munching with a spare femur. "He could tell stories. What I know is not much." "Ah, you want a piece of tobacco? Well, Père Gravedigger, you should have said. The goat's already had half of it. Why, if you'd have said earlier, I would have swapped you the whole roll for some tails. How about you tell me some now, and I'll let you have the rest?" "Well, you know, I suppose I could then. Just a few. You seem like a man of your word, and not some scallywag," replied the gravedigger as he hastily picked up his tools and clambered out of the grave. "Damned idiot thing!" he shouted maliciously, striking the goat with the bone. "Bloody hate goats. Vermin. Should be killed, the lot of them." After getting that off his chest, he sat down on a gravestone and began to tell a story. "All right, you're not the first person I've told this to," he began. "Don't matter to me one bit if you believe it or not. Right, so there was this farmer in the village. He'd heard that witches would gather to play in the church at night during the holidays. He didn't believe it, see, but he wanted to see if it was real, and he wanted to know who the witches was in the village. So, night before Easter, he sits himself in a pal in the church passage, and just like that, a whole lot of them arrived, with a great big black dog. When they came to the church door, dog stands up on its hind legs and paws at the door, which opened, even though it always gets locked. You see that?" said the woman who was closest to the dog. "And it was her here," added the gravedigger, as he held up the skull. "No, I never would have believed it, even if you had told me," the other one replied, who walked beside her, "and she was a good woman in the village here. So many followed after them now that he almost couldn't keep count, but he knew them all, and he never would have believed that there were as many witches in all Romerike as those he saw there just from Eidsvoll parish. They jumped, and they did all the blasphemous things that anyone might imagine, both in the pulpit and on the altar. When they ran out of things to do, they conjured a cow up in the tower, and let it slide down the stairs with all four legs in the air. He thought he recognised the cow as belonging to the parsonage, and when the witches were done, and everything was over in the church, then he went over to the parsonage. When he came into the stall there, he found the cow. It was quaking, and so sweaty that it frothed at the mouth. But then, once upon a time, a long time afterwards, there was a wedding, and the master of the kitchen at the wedding was the same man who had seen all this on the evening before Easter, and the woman who had led the flock of witches was also there. When it was time to sit at the table, they wanted her to take her seat first, for she was such a good wife, you know. But she was now so bashful, and made herself precious without measure. The master of the kitchen begged and pleaded with her to take her seat, but finally he grew weary of this. So he said to her quite deliberately, "Go first. You're used to it by now, I should think. You were not in the least bit shy the last time I saw you, which was at Easter, when you were the first in the dance with old Eric, both on the altar and in the pulpit." Then she fainted, and from that time she had not a single day of good health. The gravedigger fell silent, and his face again assumed its dour, contrary expression. But I persisted in asking about witches, their journeys, and their goings-on, and examining him for so long that I got him to promise to tell me everything he knew of such things. "There were some shooters," he began, "who were at a bird-leg one night at Easter. Just as they sat in the hide, in the morning twilight, they heard such a roar and a rush from the sky that they almost believed it to be a great flock of birds coming to settle on the moor. But the devil it was birds! When they came over the tops of the forest, it was a flock of witches that had been out at an Easter leg. They came riding on brooms, on billy goats and nanny goats, on muckrakes, and on the most unreasonable things that can be imagined. When they were close by, one of the shooters recognized a witch, for she was a neighbour to one of them. 'Myron Myra,' he cried, and she fell down in a pine tree, and broke a leg at the thigh, for when one recognizes them and calls them by their name, then they have to come down, no matter how high. They picked her up and delivered her to the sheriff, and in the end she was to be burned alive. But before they got her up to the pyre, she asked if they would take the scarf from her eyes a little. Yes, they would do so, but first they turned her away so she could not look towards the fields and the meadows, but far out across the hills. And wherever she laid her eyes, the forest was scorched, quite black. But this woman left a daughter behind her, and they placed her with the parson, in Gudbrandsdalen. She can't have been more than 9 years old, but she was mean and full of witchery. Once the parson told her to carry some wooden shingles that were lying in the yard to the kitchen. 'Bah! I'm sure I could get them there without carrying them,' she said. 'Really?' said the parson. 'Let me see.' Well, she immediately conjured a wind so that the shingles flew into the kitchen. The parson asked her if she could do more. Yes, she could. She could milk, she said, but she did not like to, for it injured the cattle. The parson asked her to, but she was reluctant. In the end, though, she would do it anyway. So she stuck a knife into the wall and placed a milk churn underneath, and as soon as she touched the knife, the milk ran into the churn. When she had milked for a while, she wanted to stop. 'Oh no, you continue milking, my child,' said the parson. No, she would not. But the parson spoke to her for so long that she began again. 'Now I must stop,' she said after a little while, 'for otherwise there will only come blood.' 'Oh no, you continue milking,' said the parson, 'and don't you worry about that.' She did not want to, but eventually she gave in and continued milking. After a while she said, 'Well, if I don't stop now, the best cow will lie dead in the stall.' 'Milk on, my child, and don't concern yourself about that,' said the parson, for he wanted to see what she could do. She was reluctant, but the parson pressed her until she gave in and continued milking. 'Now the cow has collapsed,' she said, and they went out to the shed to see. The best cow the parson owned lay dead in the stall, so they burned her too, just like they had done her mother. Yes, she was a terrible witch, that one I've just told you about," continued the gravedigger. "But there was one who I think was even worse, for she took her husband out of bed one night and rode on his back all the way from Gudbrandsdalen to the church in Bergen, and while she was up in the tower, observing the Easter lek with the others and old Eric, her husband had to lie stark naked outside the church, freezing the whole night, and it was terrible weather. The snow drifted, and the man was so exhausted that he was most desperate. When morning approached, he got up a little, but he was freezing and his teeth were chattering. Just then, someone came walking by. 'In God's name, please tell me where I am,' said the man. 'Well, you are at the church in Bergen,' he replied, and when he saw the girth that the man wore around his middle, then he understood how things stood. For witches were there both at Easter and at Christmas, in those days. And then he said, 'When she comes out, the one you were with, then take the girth, throw it over her from behind, and ride home again, or you won't be able to stand it.' Well, when the witches came out, the man did what he said, and rode her home as quick as you like." Now the gravedigger said he could not remember any more witch stories, but since he had begun so well, I thought I should take the opportunity to ask him if he had any to tell of the subterraneans. He said. I might well have heard something from my aunt, perhaps. When she was a girl, she was at Modum, in service with the parson there. Tileman, I think she called him. Once upon a time in the spring when the manure was to be spread, the parson enlisted a lot of folk, for he was a great man, to farm the land, and he asked folk from far and wide and all corners of the village to help. So an apprentice to a man was also invited, but he was unreasonably enthusiastic about his work. When his master told him one evening to go to bed so that he could be ready to drive to the fields at 8, he was so glad that he lay tossing and turning all night and could not sleep. There was no clock there, so he couldn't tell what time it was, and so he got up at midnight, harnessed the horses, and drove to the parsonage. But no living soul there was up yet at such an hour, so he walked around, watching out for something to pass the time. Just as he walked, he came into the churchyard, and he washed the sleep from his eyes in a ditch that was full of water, for there had recently been a shower of rain, and from that time he had second sight. But he was half distracted too, and they called him mad. Either he left the service, or he served out the year. I couldn't say which, but afterwards he wandered, hanging round the village, when there was a banquet or something else happening, and offered to chase out the subterraneans. One time there was a wedding on the farm, called Presterud, and they were baptizing a baby at Comperud on the same day. Then he was confused, for he couldn't decide which he should go to, but in the end he went to the wedding. When he had been sitting there for a while, he caught hold of the master of the kitchen. "You look after well what you have," he said. "Don't you see that the subterraneans are drinking from the beer tub that you've put in the corner there? Each moment it grows emptier. But if you will allow me to stay while the wedding lasts, I will chase them away." "Yes, you can stay. But how will you get them out?" the master of the kitchen asked. "Oh, you'll see," said the boy. He took the tub, put it in the midst of the floor, and drew a large chalk ring around it. "Now take a large club," he said to the master of the kitchen, "and when I wave at you, then strike, in the middle of the ring. It makes no difference where I am. When I have got them all in the ring, then strike with all your might." When he had said this, he began to run around. He went both high and low, shooing and chasing them into the ring. The master of the kitchen could hardly keep on his feet, for he was laughing so hard at the mad boy's antics, and everyone who saw him thought him mad. But then they saw that he was not as mad as they had supposed, for when he waved the master of the kitchen, and the master of the kitchen struck, there was a scream and a whine that was heard throughout the house, and someone who came to the wedding farm, from the direction of Comperud, told that they had heard such a rushing and a whining in the air, that sounded like a crowd of folk all speaking at the same time, to Comperud, to wet the baby's head. To Comperud, to wet the baby's head. Here ended Per Gravedigger's tales. He could remember no more that evening, he said, and began chasing the sexton's goat out of the churchyard.
Okay, so that was the end of the story. I managed to lose track of time a bit there. So suddenly the story stopped and I just went, oh, I have to unmute and everything. Ah, what the traps will do to you. I'm not reading that out loud on stream, dear. Yes, you did. Yeah, you gotta be a bit careful, dear. Yeah. Yeah. Use euphemisms. Sorry, D. I had to take that away. Yes, that was very naughty. Yeah. Be careful, or one of us will have to go around and give you a good spanking or something. Well, we are looking into European traditions, and apparently that was part of fairly daily life back in the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, uh, no, I haven't seen anything being said that you can spanking with a huge tree that you just felled and carried off the mountain. May. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to turn up my yoga into at least 3 sessions a day. Yeah, and maybe a bit more. I, d- I doubt a bit of yoga will do the trick there. Yeah, that is no, that is quite classical in Norwegian stories. You don't get from A to B just like that. There's always a story of getting the story. Um, mhm. Yeah, according to traditions, those you don't want to show up at your doorstep, you shouldn't call by name. So there was euphemisms for the devil, mostly Old Eric, and also the wolf, which was basically grey leg, and bear. That was Bamse. I would. Yeah. Yeah, it can be a bit regional. Where you sort of need the history behind it and the region. So it's not always easy to understand. But of course, you do learn it when you stay there for quite a bit. I had someone comment to me when I lived in Trondheim by a person who didn't live in the city. And she quite condescendingly said that, oh, Lynx doesn't get that. That it was with some expression. And I just, okay, I've been living here for many, many years. Yes, I did get it. I didn't say it, I just gave her quite a look. So sometimes, oh, but this is a local thing and outsiders don't understand it, and the outsider just goes, yeah, I do. So, yeah. There's that as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah, hence our National Day on the 17th. I do have to make a comment for Bear Hall Pooch in the YouTube chat. Tune in for Lynx's giggle stream. No?
Oh dear.
Oh my god, I had you on mute on OBS. I'm sorry, guys.
I was muted.
I'm sorry.
Lynx muted me.
I forgot to
Alright.
unmute you.
Right, let's do this blood. Yeah, this church. Right, professional. Eidsvoll Church, old church, built in 1190. Romanesque building, and it's probably one of the first churches of that style to be built in Norway in the shape of the cross. It was affected by fire and got rebuilt, and it had its last major fire in 1883, and it got partly rebuilt in bricks. So it's definitely been through a lot of stuff, and it's had some bad luck. And did they hear the bit where I said about the Norwegian Constitution being signed in Eidsvoll on 17th of May, 1814?
Yeah.
If it didn't, I just repeated it.
I don't think that got on. I got a bit flustered when suddenly the story ended. I usually keep a better track on it. But I got a bit distracted in the chat. So, yeah. And then suddenly everything became quiet because now I have managed to route the audio from the story so that I can actually hear them, which I didn't do before. Yes, women and tech.
Yeah, Yankee Apple thought he was going mad.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Lynx is going mad. There was an actual conversation with two people, as long as Katrina isn't just in my head, which you never know.
Sorry to tell you this, Lynx. However...
Oh my god!
Oh no! It's been a dream this whole time.
Yeah, well, life is a dream, so... Everything is a dream.
Do we live in a simulation? No, let's not get onto that one.
No, this is not a metaphysical stream, so... and that is easy to get lost in, so... Probably not tonight.
Yes, Stadium, in your imagination. Right. There's been a lot of facts about me on this stream. Okay.
That happens some days.
Gotten sidetracked.
Yeah, a bit. And yes, I know that if you were real, you wouldn't tell anyone that you imagined me. Or did I read that wrong? If I was real, I wouldn't tell you that you imagined me. Okay. Well, of
Are
course
you
you
real,
didn't.
Didi?
That is the question. He might be a hologram.
Hmm. He might be.
Yeah, one that just generates links to music on the internet, and that's it. Is an AI.
Oh my goodness. This explains how he can spam the links so quick.
Yeah, I know. I figured it out. Took me a while.
He is a guitar AI.
Yeah.
Okay. Ha. We have rumbled you.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, yeah. It's been a good stream about Norway Day. Mostly. Any closing remarks, please?
You had enough for tonight?
I don't know where this is going. I could continue, but I might dig myself a further hole because I've already declared that I'm a dragon that is not real. Which,
Yeah.
that sort of statement gets you put in an institution.
Well, good thing you're anonymous then.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah. But with the current regime, you can just claim to be a lefty and that you identify as a floating scaly eye, and it will be fine. And was that? Oh yeah, right. No problem, dude.
That is indeed.
That is the upside in our day. Just declare that you identify as something and then everything is fine.
Yeah. If I identify as an imaginary dragonkin, then that is what I am. Accept me.
Yeah.
My pronouns are snack, snacks, and snack self.
Yeah. You're a snakeette.
What are you guys? What are we smoking? You know what, Beavis? You're not gonna believe it, but nothing. Absolutely nothing. Shocking, isn't it? Oh. And this is what happens.
Yeah.
When the chat. Yes. This is me sober. This is me completely sober. You ain't want to know what it's like when I'm drunk.
I think I'll pass on that.
It was the chat's fault. I blame the chat.
Well, the chat is dangerous. It can take off. So when you pay too much attention, it can take you to unexpected places.
Yes.
But we usually end up in more wholesome places than this. So
this is neither a wholesome nor unwholesome place. This is just surreal at this point.
Yeah.
Oh well.
So Do you have any more comments on the stories you told?
No. No. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, the tale with the witches and the witch riding the husband, which sounds wrong now that I say it, to the church.
Yeah.
That's something I've never heard of them doing before. Never heard of that. And there was then a saga about, did she not have her grease horn with her, which I had to cut out. But I don't know if that's a thing with Norwegian witches, that they have horns full of grease for whatever reason.
It might have been some sort of ointment with herbs and stuff like that. For example, something that would induce a different state of consciousness that would seep in to the blood if rubbed on areas with very thin skin.
That could be the solution. Not geese, baby. Not geese. Yeah.
Leave the geese alone.
But then yeah, also just sort of these recurring themes about witches dancing with the devil throughout the European stories. And one thing of note, actually, is the chalk circle in that Subterranean's Huldra story. I found that interesting that they were contained within a chalk circle, because we have other examples in Indo-European mythology of protective circle being used to keep stuff out. I've seen that in Scottish tales. Obviously, that's in an Indian tale. So there's a lot of examples of circles being used to keep stuff out. It's just one of the first examples I've seen of circles being used to pen stuff in.
Yeah, well, it's the same concept, really.
Yes, they can't cross boundaries.
Exactly. So if you do that to keep something out or keep something in, it's really just the same.
Yeah. And I think there's also stuff about them having to be invited in, like vampires as well. So maybe they have to be let out. And it goes both ways across boundaries, which is a helpful thing to know. Would you ever have to deal with them, I guess?
Yeah, the custom of following someone to the door was to make sure that their fylgja followed with them and didn't stay in the house.
That's true.
With the witch riding her husband, just to go back to that a bit awkward thing, that takes my mind to nightmares, because the Norwegian word for that is mareritt. And that is the female demon. Mare is riding the person during the night. Ritt, that is riding.
Well, that is interesting. That does definitely link. Yeah. Well, that explains why there's that concept there then.
Yeah.
And certainly another thing that I found interesting, actually, now that I think about it, was he washes his eyes in the water that's in the ditch in the graveyard, and then he attains second sight. So I'm kind of wondering if there's a precedent for that, like if it's the dew thing coming again, like the dew thing, with the first water of the morning. And If because it's in a graveyard as well.
Well,
It's imbued with that sort of power.
It might be. As I've mentioned earlier in another stream, there was a law against trying to contact your ancestors in the graveyard, because when we shifted over to Christianity, that was seen as necromancy, where it was probably related more to Odinic rites back in the pagan times.
Yeah.
It takes my mind to Odin's talk with the Völva. A part of the reason given for that law was because you shouldn't gain knowledge you shouldn't have from the dead. So, yeah, ancestral power.
Yes.
And rubbing his eyes in water, which comes from the bones of your ancestors. Definitely sound like it should bring you a second sight.
Indeed. Yeah. And certainly could be an effect. Wouldn't recommend you go washing your eyes in random graveyards, though. Definitely not.
No.
But yeah. Well, that's about all the comments, really, that I had on those stories. Like I say, just very, very similar to a lot of the Celtic stuff, a lot of the English stuff, seeing a whole load of similarities. I feel like these guys and the other guys are at least cousins.
Yeah. I didn't have time to write any notes on the stories today. I literally finished my own story half an hour before we were to come on stream, because of Bill Gates. Yes, he is personally responsible. But I will say that one thing I like with many of the Norwegian stories is how it's many short stories in one. So in many cases, it is, one person telling, or a group of people telling stories. So you get, and on a specific theme. So you get many stories in one. So that is one interesting aspect. Maybe they should do streams. Yeah, that
would be fun. Yeah, go on. This sounds like maybe a bad idea, but I'll encourage it.
Well, as I said,
because I want to see the results.
He might end up being loved and then definitely kicked off the platform.
Kicked off the platform. Short-lived.
Yeah, you might want to go straight to Odyssey.
Yep, straight to Odyssey, mate. Yes. Would watch.
Yeah, well, it would definitely be entertaining in the meantime. So if Didi ends up streaming, you should definitely have a big store of popcorn ready.
No, you can't read stories because that's our thing already. Get your own thing.
No, you definitely shouldn't stream caucus. Or story caucus.
I mean, Bard should talk about art things.
Stick to music, Didi. Or else I'll have to come and kick your ass.
Ha. Story mafia. Gonna get you.
Yeah.
gonna find a copy of the Grimm's fairy tales pinned to your door with a machete.
I have something better than that.
Or what?
First, tie the person down, and then you start to
God.
you start to read them lefty fairy tales.
Oh, Lynx, you're sick. You're wrong in the head.
No, I
Indeed.
just know how to use words as weapons.
The underworld English thinks your shield maiden is coming through.
Perhaps a bit. She has a tendency to peep out every now and again.
DD. Okay.
Okay, I'll let you have that one, D. But do be careful.
Right.
You definitely have to keep it to Odyssey in the meanwhile. For the most part, I was about to say.
Please be good.
Please.
Yes. It would be nice if we could
If
be
you
good.
do enjoy our show, please,
Okay.
please, please be nice to us.
Please no troll. We surrender.
So yes. Naughty D in the chat.
But yeah. It's been a good one. It's been a good one. And we hope you all indulge in some Norwegianness
Yeah.
tomorrow.
If you really want to indulge, then you wear red, white, and blue tomorrow.
Which coincidentally is patriotic in many countries.
Yeah, but on the
Looks like you girls have picked up some trolls.
yeah,
DD's
he's a good friend of ours, so
He is. Hence why we've been roasting him in the chat the entire stream. But yes.
Yeah.
There has been shenanigans.
Yeah. Well, Didi can be a bit naughty, so little Miss Didi.
I mean, he can identify however he likes, or she.
So yeah, but it has been a good one. I have been really stressed out for several days now to get ready for today, and it was a stream where I just could sit down and relax, which was really good. So I am quite satisfied with that.
Right. Well, we shall see you next time.
Yeah.
And have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, and
we hope you're all well.
And hope you have a good week, and that we'll see you next Sunday. Same place and same time.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Good night.
And to you, Len, under English. Gute Nacht.